When a man can't stop thinking about a woman, he doesn't just daydream, he changes. Let me challenge something that almost everyone misunderstands about male attraction. Most people think that when a man is deeply drawn to a woman, he'll chase harder, text more, and make obvious moves to win her over. But here's the truth nobody's talking about. When a man genuinely can't stop thinking about a woman, three specific, observable shifts happen in his behavior and psychology that have nothing to do with chasing or pursuing. These changes occur automatically without him planning them, and they completely transform how he shows up in her world. Here's what most people miss. You've been told that men who are interested will always make the first move, that attraction means pursuit, that if he's not constantly reaching out, he's not that into you. You've heard that men compartmentalize easily, that they can take or leave romantic interests without much thought, that emotional investment comes slowly, if at all. But that entire framework ignores the basic reality of how male psychology actually responds when someone captures his attention at a deep level. When a man is genuinely consumed with thoughts of a woman, he doesn't follow the predictable script. His system reorganizes in ways that create behaviors most dating advice never prepares you to recognize. This isn't romantic fantasy or wishful thinking. This is about how the male nervous system responds to significant attraction, how brain chemistry shifts when someone becomes mentally important, and the way men's behavioral patterns change when a woman takes up real space in their consciousness. When a man can't stop thinking about a woman, his entire approach to life adjusts around that reality. And that adjustment creates signals, choices, and ways of being that are completely different from casual interest or surface attraction. These three shifts aren't random. They're predictable responses to what's happening in his internal world. The problem is, most relationship advice treats male interest like it's simple and obvious. He likes you, so he pursues. He's not interested, so he disappears. But real attraction, the kind that sticks in someone's mind and won't let go, it operates on a completely different level. When a woman becomes the person a man thinks about constantly, when she's the one he replays conversations with, when she's who he imagines future scenarios around, his entire presence shifts. And that shift creates effects that typical dating behavior doesn't capture. So stay with me here. Don't check out, because what you're about to learn will completely change how you read male behavior and understand what's actually happening beneath surface actions. You'll discover why some men seem to pull back when they're most interested, why genuine preoccupation looks different from casual pursuit, and exactly what's happening in his world when you're taking up that much mental space. Let's break it down. Before we get into the three specific shifts that happen to him, you need to understand the foundation of how male psychology processes intense attraction. This isn't mystical. This is how the brain works. When a man is thinking about a woman constantly, several biological processes kick in that create real changes in how he operates. His brain starts producing specific chemicals, dopamine, which drives motivation and creates that sense of wanting to be near someone, oxytocin, which builds feelings of attachment and connection, and a stress hormone called cortisol, which actually increases when we're attracted to someone because attraction creates a form of positive stress in the system. These chemicals don't just stay internal, they change how a man moves through his day. His focus shifts, his priorities rearrange, his emotional availability changes. And here's the key part. Men often don't recognize what's happening to them. Male conditioning teaches guys to not pay close attention to emotional states, to push through feelings rather than examine them, to stay logical and controlled. So when a woman starts occupying significant mental real estate, many men don't immediately understand why they're feeling different or behaving differently. They just notice things feel shifted. When a man is thinking about a woman constantly, his attention system gets rewired around her. Think about how attention works normally. We spread it across dozens of things throughout the day: work tasks, friends, hobbies, responsibilities, entertainment. But when someone becomes mentally significant, They start pulling attention away from everything else. He's in a meeting and something reminds him of her. He's working out and he's wondering what she's doing. He's with friends, and part of his mind is thinking about the last conversation they had. This isn't him choosing to think about her. It's his brain automatically redirecting focus because she's become psychologically important. But here's where male psychology gets interesting. Men are taught that being preoccupied with a woman means weakness or neediness or loss of control. There's massive social conditioning around staying cool, keeping options open, not getting too invested too quickly. So when a man finds himself unable to stop thinking about someone, it often creates internal conflict. Part of him is experiencing these intense feelings and this constant mental pull toward her. Another part of him is questioning why he's so affected, wondering if he's being foolish, trying to maintain emotional distance, even while his brain keeps bringing him back to thoughts of her. There's also the reality of how men process uncertainty. When a man can't stop thinking about a woman, there's usually an element of not knowing where he stands. Does she feel similarly? Is he reading things correctly? What would happen if he made his interest clear? This uncertainty keeps his mind actively engaged because the brain naturally works to resolve unanswered questions. It's like having a puzzle that won't let you rest until it's solved. His thoughts about her become more frequent because his brain is trying to figure out the situation, reading interactions for clues, replaying moments to interpret meaning. Another factor is the contrast effect. When someone stands out in your mind this significantly, everyone else starts to pale in comparison. A man who's constantly thinking about a particular woman will notice that other women who might have interested him before now seem less appealing. Conversations that would have engaged him feel flat. Interactions that would have sparked curiosity feel empty. This comparison isn't something he's doing consciously. It's his brain automatically measuring everything against the standard she's set. And that contrast makes her occupy even more mental space because she's the clear standout. Finally, there's the element of emotional investment creating behavior change. When someone takes up this much mental energy, when they matter this much psychologically, it affects choices and actions. He starts making decisions differently, considering her perspective on things, thinking about how choices might affect potential with her. This isn't calculated strategy. It's what naturally happens when someone becomes important to us. They factor into our decision making because our brain has identified them as significant to our well-being and happiness. The first thing that happens to him is this. He starts protecting the connection right you see there than pursuing it. And this looks like pulling back when he's actually most invested. This is one of the most misunderstood patterns in male behavior. When a man can't stop thinking about a woman when she's genuinely gotten under his skin, his instinct isn't always to chase harder. Often it's to slow down and protect what's developing. This completely contradicts what most dating advice teaches about male pursuit, but it's rooted in real psychology about how men handle high-stakes emotional situations. Here's why this happens. When a man realizes someone has become this important to him, when he recognizes he's thinking about her constantly and she's affecting him deeply, fear kicks in. Not fear of her specifically, but fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of ruining something that feels significant. Men are conditioned to handle risk in professional and physical domains, but emotional risk, especially around relationships that matter, that's a different story. Most men don't have strong frameworks for handling intense romantic vulnerability. So when they feel it, protective instincts engage. This protection shows up as behavioral caution. He might wait longer to text back, even though he wants to respond immediately. He might hold back from making plans too frequently, even though he wants to see her constantly. He might keep conversations lighter than what's actually going through his mind. None of this means reduced interest. It's actually evidence of increased investment. He's being careful because he doesn't want to mess things up. He's trying to not come on too strong because he's worried about overwhelming her or revealing how affected he actually is. The pulling back also comes from male fear of neediness. Men are taught that showing how much you want something, especially in relationships, gives the other person power and makes you less attractive. Whether this is accurate doesn't matter. It's a deeply ingrained belief in male psychology. So when a man catches himself thinking about a woman all the time, missing her when she's not around, wanting more contact than they currently have, warning bells go off. His conditioning tells him he needs to cool it, create distance, protect himself from appearing too eager. Another layer to this is testing the connection. When something feels too good or too intense, men often unconsciously test whether it's real. Pulling back slightly becomes a way to see if the woman will reach out, if she'll maintain interest, if the connection can handle some space. This isn't manipulation, it's uncertainty seeking reassurance. He's thinking about her constantly and wondering if what he's feeling has any basis in mutual reality. Creating a bit of distance lets him gauge whether there's reciprocal investment. This protective pulling back confuses women because it looks like disinterest from the outside. She's feeling the connection, noticing his engagement when they're together, but then experiencing what seems like withdrawal. What she doesn't see is that the withdrawal isn't about her. It's about him managing his own overwhelming feelings. It's about him trying to maintain composure when internally he's more affected than he knows how to handle. The space he creates isn't rejection, it's self-protection born from caring too much too fast. What makes this particularly tricky is that it can look identical to actual disinterest. Slower responses, less initiation, creating space. These behaviors show up in both scenarios. The difference is in other signals. When a man is pulling back because he's overwhelmed by how much he's thinking about someone, there are tells. When they are together, his attention is complete. His engagement is total. The quality of presence is unmistakable. He remembers details from previous conversations. He brings up things she mentioned weeks ago. His eyes track her in group settings. The connection when they're in contact is intense, which makes the space between contacts feel more confusing. The second thing that happens is this: his future orientation shifts and he starts unconsciously planning his life with her in it before anything is even defined. When a man can't stop thinking about a woman, something changes in how he thinks about time. Specifically, his future stops being something that's just about him. He starts imagining upcoming events, experiences, and life moments with her as part of the picture. This happens automatically without him sitting down and deciding to do it. His brain just starts naturally including her in forward thinking because she's become that mentally significant. This shift is huge because men typically keep future planning separate from early stage dating. Male psychology tends to compartmentalize. There's the present situation and there's long-term planning, and they're usually pretty separate. Most men don't blend the two until they've consciously decided someone is relationship material. But when a man is thinking about a woman constantly, that compartmentalization breaks down. She starts showing up in his mental images of future scenarios without him deliberately putting her there. This shows up in small ways at first. He's thinking about an event coming up in a few months, and in his mind, she's there with him. He's considering a vacation he wants to take, and he's picturing her as the person he'd want to go with. He's thinking about a career move or life change, and he's factoring in how it might affect potential with her. None of these thoughts are commitments or plans he's making with her. They're just his brain automatically including her in future thinking because she's occupying so much present mental space. The planning also shows up in how he talks about future events. He might mention something happening months from now and casually reference her being there, even though nothing's been officially planned. He might talk about activities or experiences he wants to do someday, and in how he describes them, there's an implied with you, even if he doesn't say it directly. He might ask questions about her future plans, schedule, or timeline in a way that suggests he's trying to figure out how their paths might line up. What makes this particularly revealing is that men don't do this with casual interests. Future planning, even mental future planning, requires psychological investment. It means his brain has moved her from the category of current situation I'm navigating to person who might be part of my ongoing life. That's a significant shift that happens unconsciously when someone won't leave your thoughts. Your brain starts building a future that includes them because it's already oriented around them in the present. Another aspect of this is how his goals and priorities start shifting. When a man can't stop thinking about a woman, things that mattered before might matter less, and things that matter to her start mattering more to him. This isn't him losing himself. It's natural alignment that happens when someone becomes important. He might become more interested in her hobbies or interests, start reading about things she cares about, make choices in his own life that create more compatibility with the life she's building. Again, this isn't calculated. It's automatic adjustment that happens when someone occupies significant mental space. The future orientation also affects his decision-making in the present. When someone's constantly in your thoughts, you start making choices through the lens of how those choices affect potential with that person. He might turn down opportunities that would create distance, prioritize flexibility in his schedule, make financial or career choices with an eye toward creating stability that would support a relationship. These aren't huge dramatic gestures, they're subtle shifts in priorities that reflect how much he's affecting his internal landscape. What's interesting is men often don't fully recognize they're doing this. The shifts feel natural, not like big decisions. It's only if someone pointed it out or if something disrupted the connection that he'd look back and realize how much his thinking had already incorporated her into his future. This unconscious integration is powerful evidence that she's not just someone he's casually interested in. She's someone his brain has already started building a life around, whether he's consciously acknowledged that or not. The third thing that happens is this. He becomes emotionally unpredictable because his internal state is constantly influenced by the connection's status, and he doesn't know how to manage it. When a man can't stop thinking about a woman, his emotional stability gets tied to anything related to her. How she responds to a message, whether she seems engaged when they talk, if plans are happening or falling through. Small things that normally wouldn't affect his mood suddenly have significant impact. This emotional volatility is completely unlike how men typically operate, and it reveals just how much she's gotten into his system. Men are generally taught to keep emotions steady and controlled, not to let external circumstances, especially relationship circumstances, dictate internal state. But when someone is thinking about you constantly, when you've become that psychologically central, that control goes out the window. His mood lifts when there's positive interaction, drops when there's uncertainty or distance, shifts throughout the day based on whether he's feeling confident or anxious about where things stand. This roller coaster is evidence of deep investment, not casual interest. This emotional unpredictability shows up in his behavior patterns. Some days he's warm, engaged, and reaching out frequently. Other days he's quieter, more withdrawn, seemingly distant. The inconsistency isn't game playing. It's him riding emotional waves he doesn't know how to handle. When he's feeling secure about the connection, when he's had positive interaction or gotten clear signals of her interest, he's more open and available. When he's feeling uncertain, when too much time has passed without contact or he's worried he's more invested than she is, he pulls back to protect himself. The unpredictability also comes from internal conflict between what he's feeling and what he thinks he should be feeling. Part of him wants to express how much she's on his mind, how much he wants to see her, how much their interactions matter to him. Another part tells him that's too much, too soon, too exposing. This internal battle creates behavioral inconsistency. He might send a message that's more revealing than usual, then follow it up with something more casual because he second-guessed the vulnerability. He might make enthusiastic plans, then seem more reserved when you actually get together because he's trying to not show how excited he really is. Another way this shows up is insensitivity to her responses. When a man is thinking about a woman constantly, he reads into everything. A short text response that normally wouldn't register suddenly feels like potential rejection. A delayed reply creates anxiety. An enthusiastic response creates a mood boost that lasts hours. This hyperattention to signals happens because she's emotionally significant. His well-being has become connected to the status of their connection, and he doesn't have the tools to detach from that. Men also struggle with this emotional reactivity because it feels like loss of control. Most men pride themselves on emotional steadiness, on not being affected by relationship dynamics, on staying rational and composed. When they find themselves on an emotional roller coaster based on a woman's responses and the status of a connection, it creates frustration with themselves. Why am I so affected by this? Why does her response matter so much? Why can't I just be cool about this? This internal frustration can create more unpredictability as he swings between trying to be unaffected and being unable to hide how much he cares. The emotional unpredictability is also exhausting for him, constantly thinking about someone, having your mood tied to interaction with them, managing the internal conflict between showing interest and protecting yourself. It takes significant mental and emotional energy. This exhaustion can create periods where he withdraws, not because he's lost interest, but because he needs to stabilize himself. He needs breaks from the intensity of his own feelings. These breaks look like disinterest from outside, but internally, they're about him trying to regain equilibrium so he can handle the situation better. What makes all of this particularly significant is that emotional unpredictability in men is rare. Most men develop strategies early on to keep emotions steady and not let external circumstances, especially romantic ones, create this level of internal volatility. When you see this unpredictability, when his behavior and mood seem tied to the connection status, it's not immaturity or games. It's evidence that he's more affected than he knows how to handle. He's thinking about you constantly, and it's disrupting his normal emotional operating system in ways he doesn't have frameworks to manage. As we bring this together, understand that these three patterns, protective pulling back despite intense interest, unconscious future planning that includes her, and emotional unpredictability tied to the connection, aren't random behaviors. They're specific, measurable responses to the reality that a woman has become impossible for him to stop thinking about. When all three show up together, you're not seeing confusion or mixed signals. You're witnessing what happens when a man is deeply affected but doesn't have the tools to manage or express it in straightforward ways. The power of understanding these patterns is that it lets you read beneath surface behavior. You stop interpreting distance as disinterest and start recognizing it might be self-protection. You stop seeing inconsistency as game playing and start understanding it as someone managing overwhelming feelings. You stop waiting for obvious pursuit and start noticing the subtle ways his entire life is reorganizing around you. This understanding doesn't tell you what to do. It gives you accurate information about what's actually happening so you can make informed choices. Here's what this means moving forward. Stop expecting male interest to look like obvious, consistent pursuit. Start recognizing that when a man is genuinely consumed with thoughts of a woman, his behavior often becomes more complex, not more simple. The men who are casually interested have straightforward behavior patterns because they're not that affected. The men who are deeply invested often show more contradictory signals because they're managing internal conflicts between what they feel and what they think they should do about those feelings. Understanding these patterns also helps you identify what's real versus what's surface. If a man's behavior shows these three shifts, if you can see the protective caution mixed with deep engagement, the future thinking that's starting to include you, the emotional responsiveness that's tied to connection status, something real is developing. His brain has already reorganized around you, whether he's admitted it or not. But if these patterns aren't present, if his behavior stays consistently casual, if there's no evidence of internal conflict or future thinking or emotional emotional investment, you have clear information that he's not at the level of constantly thinking about you. The most effective position you can take is staying grounded in your own worth while reading situations accurately. Don't make excuses for poor behavior by telling yourself he's just scared because he likes me so much. But also don't dismiss genuine interest because it's not showing up in obvious ways. Watch for these specific patterns. Notice whether his actions over time reveal someone whose internal world has shifted around you. Trust what behavior tells you more than what words say or don't say. And remember that men who are truly affected often struggle to navigate it smoothly because male conditioning doesn't give them good frameworks for handling this level of emotional intensity. Thank you for investing your time in understanding what actually happens in male psychology when a woman